what does BRICS mean for the country, what does BRICS mean for companies, organizations, and ultimately what does BRICS mean for individuals here in South Africa and beyond. I think the key topics, coming out of Durban has been one of the key themes. Perhaps has been sort of deepening versus widening, trying to deepen the organization by creating institutions like the BRICS Development Bank, a almost developing world financial stabilization fund, almost a counterweight to the IMF through the pooling of foreign exchange reserves between respective countries. An academic forum, a BRICS academic forum, is another sign of this attempt to deepen the institution. The counter-argument to that is one of widening institution. BRICS, South Africa was invited by the Chinese Beijing in December 2010 to join then BRIC, which became BRICS. One of the debates has been, well, do we start to widen this institution to create include other countries, leading emerging market countries, economies, likes of Turkey, Vietnam, Mexico, even Nigeria perhaps, and expand the acronym. Maybe BRICS could have been BRICSIT with an Indonesia and a Turkey added on. I think this debate around the deepening versus widening will remain with us for a while. I think at the moment it's more about consolidation, but in some years to come we'll start to see a broadening of the alliance. I think the second thing, as mentioned this evening at the Africa Frontiers Forum here at the DBSA, was that of peer-to-peer learning, but not just peer-to-peer learning within the BRICS, but also peer-to-peer competition. Of course, ultimately, whilst we are geopolitical collaborators, we are also geoeconomic through trade competitors. I think this is a key issue which should not be forgotten. And when I say peer-to-peer competition, is ultimately emerging market economies compete with each other through trade, even competing for capital, for investment from each other, but perhaps more importantly, the old first traditional world as well. I think the third factor is that from a South African perspective is we have been perhaps cruelly called a BRICette as opposed to fully fledged BRIC member. We have 50 million people. Clearly we're the smallest but arguably the most enthusiastic member of the BRICS economies. But if we are able to, as our Department of Trade and Industry is trying to do very correctly, is trying to integrate the regional economy with SADC, EAC in East Africa, COMESA stretching from Zambia up to Egypt, creating a regional bloc almost. Ultimately, if we align our regional integration efforts with our membership of BRICS, then ultimately the S in SADC should not just stand for South Africa, but should stand, the S in BRICS should stand for not just South Africa, but for SADC. As a regional entity, a bloc with 15 member countries, we are 275 million people. We're bigger than Brazil, we're bigger than Russia, we're even bigger than the other aspirant members like Turkey, Mexico, Vietnam, as mentioned. I think going forward, the road to Brazil 2014, which is hosting the next summit. South Africa's responsibility will be pushing perhaps the creation of BRICS Development Bank, which has been mooted and in principle agreed to move forward post-Durban. I think, of course, the devil's in the detail around that. I think something else which is a great opportunity we've not discussed is that of the BRICS assuming the responsibility for kickstarting the stalled Doha round of trade negotiations, particularly in light of Western protectionism. I think we could certainly adopt an economic, moral high ground to that going forward. And last point, perhaps this year, South Africa should be also pushing, what hasn't been discussed, perhaps as the trade has ballooned and grown very rapidly between our countries, is starting to get investment kick-started as well. And that is through sovereign wealth funds, pension funds in each respective country investing in each other. So there's a lot of upside potentially. I think the momentum is there. It's a work in progress, as the Indian High Commissioner said this evening as well. But again, will we deepen or will we widen? I think this will be the major sort of theme going forward this next 12 months.